الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما.
الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله، أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله، أشهد أن عليا ولي الله وأنه حجة الله صلوات الله عليه. حي على الصلاة، حي على الصلاة، حي على الفلاح، حي على الفلاح، حي على خير العمل، حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة، قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الرحمن الرحيم، مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم، صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا أنزلناه في ليلة القدر، وما أدراك ما ليلة القدر. ليلة القدر خير من 1000 شهر. تنزل الملائكة والروح فيها بإذن ربهم من كل أمر. سلام هي حتى مطلع الفجر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سبحان الله. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الرحمن الرحيم، مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم، صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد، الله الصمد، لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. كذلك الله ربي. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا، وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة، إنك أنت الوهاب. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سبحان الله. سبحان الله. سبحان الله. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. بسم الله. Oh, check. Check. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء وخضع لها كل شيء وذل لها كل شيء وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء. يا نور يا قدوس يا نور يا قدوس يا نور يا قدوس يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تهتك العصام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تقطع الرجاء. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء. اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك وأستشفع بك إلى نفسك وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك وأن تزعني شكرك وأن تلهمني ذكرك. اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متذلل خاشع أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانعا وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت فاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته وعظم فيما عندك رغبته. اللهم عظم سلطانك وعلى مكانك وخفي مكرك وظهر أمرك وغلب قهرك وجرت قدرتك ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك. اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا ولا لقبائحي ساترا ولا لشيء من عملي القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيرك. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك. ظلمت نفسي ظلمت نفسي ظلمت نفسي وتجرأت بجهلي وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترته وكم من فادح من البلاء أقلته وكم من عثار وقيته وكم من مكروه دفعته وكم من ثناء جميل لست أهلا له نشرته. اللهم عظم بلائي وأفرط بي سوء حالي وقصرت بي أعمالي وقعدت بي أغلالي وحبسني عن نفعي بعد آمالي وخدعتني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بجنايتها ومطالي. يا سيدي
فأسألك بعزتك أن لا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعالي، ولا تفضحني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سري، ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملت في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي. وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأحوال رؤوفا، وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا. إلهي وربي من لي غيرك، أسأله كشف ضري والنظر في أمري. إلهي ومولاي، أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي، ولم أحترس فيه من تزيين عدوي، فغرني بما أهوى وأسعده على ذلك القضاء، فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعض حدودك، وخالفت بعض أوامرك، فلك الحجة علي في جميع ذلك، ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاؤك، وألزمني حكمك وبلاؤك. وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي، معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا مستغفرا منيبا مقرا مذعنا معترفا، لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني، ولا مفزعا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في سعة من رحمتك. اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري، وفكني من شدي وثاقي. يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني، يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني، يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عظمي. يا من بدأ خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي، هبني لابتداء كرمك وسالف برك بي. يا إلهي وسيدي وربي، أتراك معذبي بنارك بعد توحيدك، وبعد ما انطوى عليه قلبي من معرفتك، ولهج به لساني من ذكرك، واعتقدوا ضميري من حبك، وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك. هيهات، أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيت، أو تبعد من أدنيت، أو تشرد من آويت، أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمته. وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي، أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدا، وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك صادقة وبشكرك مادحة، وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققة، وعلى ضمائر حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعة، وعلى جوارح سعت إلى أوطان تعبدك طائعة، وأشارت باستغفارك مذعنا. ما هكذا الظن بك، ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك. يا كريم يا رب، يا كريم يا رب، يا كريم يا رب.
وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها، وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها، على أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه، قليل مكثور، يسير بقاء، قصير مدته. فكيف احتمالي لبلايا الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها، وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه، ولا يخفف عن أهله، لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك، وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض. يا سيدي، فكيف بي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين المستكين. يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي، لأي الأمور إليك أشكو، ولما منها أضج وأبكي، لأليم العذاب وشدته، أم لطول البلاء ومدته، فلئن صيرتني للعقوبات مع أعدائك، وجمعت بيني وبين بلائك، وفرغت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك، فابني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي، صبرت على عذابك، فكيف أصبر على فراقك؟ وابني يا إلهي صبرت على حر نارك، فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك؟ أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجائي عفوك؟ فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا، لئن تركتني ناطقا لأضجن إليك بين أهلها ضجيج العاملين، ولا صرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين، ولا أبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين، ولا أنادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين، يا غاية آمال العارفين، يا غياث المستغيثين، يا غياث المستغيثين، يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين، ويا إله العالمين. أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفة، وضاقت مع عذابها بمعصيته، وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريرته، وهو يضج إليك ضجيج مؤمل لرحمتك، ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك، ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك يا مولاي. فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك؟ أم كيف تؤلم النار وهو يأمل فضلك ورحمتك؟ أم كيف يحرق لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانه؟ أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفه؟ أم كيف يتغلغل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقه؟ أم كيف تزجره زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا رب؟ أم كيف يرجو فضلك في عتقه منها فتتركه فيها هيهات ما ذلك الظن بك ولا المعروف من فضلك ولا مشبه لما عاملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك فباليقين أقطع لولا ما حكمت به من تعذيب جاحديك وقضيت به من إخلاد مقانديك لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما وما كان لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما لكنك تقدست أسماؤك أقسمت أن تملأها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين وأن تخلد فيها المقاندين وأن تجل ثناؤك قلت مبتدعا وتطولت بالإنعام متكرما أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون إلهي وسيدي فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي حتمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من عليه أجريتها أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمت وكل ذنب أذنبت وكل قبيح أسررت وكل جهل عملت كتمته وأعلنت أخفيته وأظهرت وكل سيئة أمرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جوارحي وكنت أنت الرقيب علي من ورائي والشاهد لما خفي عنه وبرحمتك أخفيت وبفضلك سترت وأن توفر حظي من كل خير أنزلت أو إحسان فضلت أو بر نشرت أو رزق بسطت أو ذنب تغفر أو خطأ تستر يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رقي يا من بيده ناصيتي يا عليما بضري ومسكنتي يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب أسألك بحقك وقدسك وأعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي من الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورة وبخدمتك موصولة وأعمالي عندك مقبولة حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا يا سيدي يا من عليه محولي، يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي. يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، قم على خدمتك جوارحي، واشدد على العزيمة جوانحي، وأبلي الجد في خشيتك، والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك، حتى أسرح إليك في ميادين السابقين، وأسرع إليك في البارزين، وأشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين، وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين، وأخافك مخافة الموقنين، واجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين. اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فأرد، ومن قادني فكيد، واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك، وأقربهم منزلة منك، وأخصهم زلفة لديك، فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك، وجد لي بجودك، واعطف علي بمجدك، واحفظني برحمتك، واجعل لساني بذكرك لهجا، وقلبي بحبك متيما، ومن علي بحسن إجابتك، وأقلني عثرتي، واغفر زلتي، فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك، وأمرتهم بدعائك، وضمنت لهم الإجابة، فإليك يا ربي نصبت وجهي، وإليك يا ربي مددت يدي، فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي، وبلغني مناي، ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي، واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي. يا سريع الرضا اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء، فإنك فعال لما تشاء. يا من اسمه دواء، وذكره شفاء، وطاعته غنى، ارحم من رأس ماله الرجاء، وسلاح البكاء. يا سابغ النعم، يا دافع النقاب، يا نور المستوحشين في الظلام، يا عالما لا يعلم، صل على محمد وآل محمد، وافعل بما أنت أهله. وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله، وسلم تسليما كثيرا.
اللهم
صل على
محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وآله الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Okay, so we're still in our introduction and the introductory discussions that we had. Inshallah, tonight will be the last night for the introduction, and then we're going to move on into what Ijtihad looks like, inshallah. What we have here is that we said that we had 3 discussions to have if we are one of the mukhatti'ah, the ones who believe that a mujtahid can get it wrong. Allah is sitting there and waiting to see what a mujtahid comes to, and then he will make that the rule. Or he will put a maslaha or an expediency in whatever the mujtahid arrives at. No. There's a real rule there in Allah's knowledge, and what happens is we're trying to reach that rule through our ijtihad. Okay? We're trying to reach that rule. Sometimes we hit the target, sometimes we miss the target. All in all, though, we are excused if we don't hit the target. Okay? So we are of the Taqlid school of thought. We are mukhatti'ah, they call it. If you are mukhatti'ah, there are 3 things we talk about. Number 1, that the rules and laws that Islam has, they are based on real expediency, real maslaha and mafsada, real good and bad in this world. It's as if, okay, what I'm saying theologically is going to be problematic, but it's as if Allah looks at an action and He says, this action has this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bad things in it, so I'm going to make it haram. Something like that. This action, in and of itself, is good, so I'm going to make it, or it's so good that the person needs this for their society and for there to be not to be chaos, for there not to be issues, so I'm going to make it haram. I'm going to make it wajib, and so on and so forth, okay? So that's the first discussion that we've covered. That the rules that are real rules that we're trying to reach, these are not just random rules. God feels like it, He's like, I'm going to make this wajib. No, He looks at the actions. He looks at the good and the bad in each action, weighs them out, comes to the conclusion that, let me make it wajib, let me make it haram, let me make it mustahab, makruh, and so on. Now, these laws that are based on real good and bad, real expediency, question is, didn't we say sometimes we can reach that, sometimes we won't reach it, sometimes we'll get it right, sometimes we'll get it wrong? So what's the point of all of this anyway, when in Allah's knowledge it's there, but we don't have access to God's knowledge? We don't have access to the Prophet, the Imams. Even if we did have access to the Prophet and Imams, at the end of the day, when I ask the Prophet a question and he gives me an answer, it goes through the filter of my understanding. So I might still be getting it wrong, actually. So what's the point here of all of this talk? Well, we talked about something called hujjiyah and how that works when it comes to a mujtahid trying to reach that real ruling. True, the ultimate goal is that real ruling, but we can never ascertain that. But what we're after in reality is what? We have to have a hujjah before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we said it's an argument that can be used in a court of akhirah law. In the akhirah, if Allah says, why'd you get it wrong? My answer is, well, you had made this binding on me to follow this proof that was established for me. I followed the proof, but at the end of the day, that proof was 80%, 70%. I was certain that it's going to be right. It wasn't 100%, but you had told me still to follow that. Okay? So I am after, and a mujtahid is after hujjiyah. True, we're after the real rules. But in reality, we are after a hujjah for those real rules. We can't access them directly. So we try our best, and we follow the proofs and evidences that Islam, the Sharia, have sanctioned for us. And there's a whole list of them. What you can follow, what you cannot follow. Some, there's differences of opinion amongst our maraja. Some, like qiyas we talked about before, everyone agrees in the Shia school of thought that you can't follow qiyas. And we talked about what that means before, and we might talk about it in the future as well. All right, so we follow hujjah. We're after having an excuse. If I got it wrong, I have a hujjah before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If I didn't follow that hujjah I'm going to be held, or can be held accountable on the Day of Judgment. Hujjah. It all revolves around hujjah. That medium between us and those real rules that we have no access to, but we know they're there. Allah says, use these channels to try to get to it, and I will take care of the rest. This is hujjah on you, means it's binding on you. All right. That's the second discussion. If you are of the mukhatti'ah, these things come up. The third thing that we want to talk about now is this, and this question was brought up last week, which shows that, yeah, there's a logical sequence between these three discussions that we're having. The third discussion that comes up is, well, it doesn't sound very fair for God to sanction certain things, tell us that certain things are wajib on us to follow, tell us that certain things are binding, and hujjah over us, we follow them, but there's only 70-80% we're sure that it's going to be right. Sometimes it might be wrong. And as a result, because these Islamic laws were based on real good and bad, I'm going to miss out on some of that good and bad. I'll give you an example. If, let's just say, smoking is a very bad thing for me, but we don't have any hadith that says it's haram, the marja will say, okay, I can't find any hadith that say it's haram. And let's just say it has not been established for this marja. He's living 200 years ago. He says, it hasn't been established for me that smoking is harmful. There's no reason for him to make it haram, let's say. He says, I don't have a hadith for it. I don't have any other reason to make it haram. This marja says it's halal, because that's the rule we have. If you don't have any proof that something's haram, you can't say it's haram. As a mujtahid, you can't. He says smoking is halal. Turns out, in reality, it was very problematic and very harmful. And so, I am going to suffer a disadvantage here. I am going to suffer from a mafsada here. Okay? We followed the rules of God. We followed the rules of the Sharia. Islam had said, if you're not sure, then you can go ahead and have that thing. The mujtahid gave his fatwa, gave his verdict, is halal. Flip side, a mujtahid comes across a hadith, let's say, there is no such thing, but I'm just saying, that Salatul Fajr is not wajib. Okay? And he gives a fatwa that it's not wajib. Salatul Fajr is not wajib. Okay? And I never pray Fajr throughout my life. I mean, they make it wajib, we still don't pray it, but anyway. So, I'm missing out on something very important as a result of the rules that the Sharia has sanctioned. That, look, if you're not sure something's wajib or not, or if a hadith, let's say, a proper hadith or 10 hadiths tell you that something's not wajib, you don't have to do it, but I end up not doing it, I miss Salatul Fajr, and guess what? There was a very big maslaha, a very big high expediency in that for me that I missed out on. As a result of what? Following the rules God or Sharia set for me. Ijtihad set for me. It said if you have, let's say, a reliable hadith, you're supposed to follow it. I followed it. It told me don't do Salatul Fajr. So, this is the third thing that comes up, and the last thing that we need to discuss. That look, we are depriving sometimes ourselves of these expediencies that we believe exist in these rules when we follow those channels that Allah has sanctioned for us and has told us to use to reach those rules and laws. All right? We have this all the time. Both marjas can't be correct when one of them says lobster is halal, the other one says it's haram. So someone here is making a mistake. So there's some expediency lost in the middle of all of this, right? If you're mukhatti'ah, of course. If you're one of the other ones that we said, both are right, both there's a rule for them, there's a maslaha for both of them, that's a different story. We talked about this way back, so we don't want to go back to it. But if you believe that there's only one rule, and we're trying to get to that, one of these guys is going to be wrong. As a result, someone here is falling into a mafsada. Yes? Alright, so now, having said all of that, how do we solve this problem? There's different ways, and there's different things that have been said here. And as I said before, again and again, we're going through these introductory discussions because these will help us later. I might, refer back to these. And so, these are foundational into our discussions moving forward. Alright, the different answers that have been given here. There's three that I want to discuss. The last one is by yours truly, so we'll talk about that one. You won't find that in any usul books, but I want to share what I think. But the first one is one that belongs to, I don't want to say belongs to Sheikh Muzaffar, his name is, Muhammad Rida Muzaffar. But he's one who has elaborated on this, and his books are the ones that are studied in some of the hawzat out there. So, he says in his book that we have a maslaha, he calls it tashiliya. Tashil means to make something easier, facilitate something, make it easier. He says, look, that is true. We are going to sometimes miss out on some of these expediencies that were in the rules because we were told to follow certain proofs and evidences. Some of those are going to be wrong, miss the mark, and as a result, we miss out. Yeah, that's true, I agree. But there's another expediency here, one that is for the greater good, one that encompasses all of us as a community, as a people, that overrules all those individual maslahas that you and I might sometimes miss out on and be deprived of. What does he mean? He says, look, Allah knows how hard it will be to make us achieve yaqeen for everything. Think about it. Even if you're living during the time of the Prophet, even if you're living during the time of the Imams, we've all heard the stories of how hard it was for some people to access the Prophet and the Imams. Some people are living far away from the Prophet. Yeah, he comes to see the Prophet, he never sees the Prophet. Uwais al-Qarani. He never saw the Prophet. Now this is a person who becomes shaheed alongside Imam Ali alayhi salam in his battles. Such a great individual, but he never got the chance to see the Holy Prophet. Sometimes you're living far away from the Prophet. Ja'far al-Tayyar, for years he was away from the Holy Prophet in Ethiopia. Sometimes you never get the chance because you're too far away. Sometimes no, there's severe taqiyya circumstances that don't allow you to be able to approach the Imams. And we've heard the stories, the guy has to like dress up as a, what was it, a cucumber seller or something? And to be able to like get into the house of the Imam as if he's selling cucumbers to the Imam so he can answer the question of the Imam, for example, or whatever it was. I forget the story exactly. Okay? So you don't always have access to the Imams. And as I said before, even if you have access to them, when you ask them a question and they answer you, it's going through your filter of your understanding. So at the end of the day, do we always have yaqeen and 100% conviction of what the rules are, even if we live during the time of the prophets and the Imams? No. So if you're living in the Prophet's time, it's going to be hard. If you're living, God forbid, in the time of ghaibah, there's no way you can reach the Imam, right? So how are we supposed to achieve yaqeen? The only way you can achieve a yaqeen during the times of ghaibah is what? To have a mutawatir hadith for everything, which we don't. We barely have that anything close to that, to have a mutawatir hadith for everything. Yeah, we only have a few, and those have to do with aqa'id. The best you'll have is mustafid and mashhur and these kinds of things. All right, so Allah knows, or Islam, the Sharia knows how hard it is for us to achieve yaqeen for everything. Number one. Number two, to make things easier, and that's what Allah does. He makes things easier, all right, for us to be able to. It's a practical religion we have. You've heard that saying by the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the famous one. He says, "I was sent with the easygoing, the easygoing religion, al-Hanafiyyat as-Samhat as-Sahla. Yeah, I was sent with that religion, with the easygoing one, and then all of a sudden you have to, get yaqeen for everything. No. So Allah knows how hard it is, and so to make things easier, He allows for us to follow these hujjas. These, they call them amarat. Those things that bring us 70, 80%, 60% certainty. He says, I'll fill the rest up myself. Act as if this is 100%. What would you do if you were 100% sure what this hadith is saying is right? You would go by it, do that, it's fine. But I might get it wrong. He says, it's okay, because it's either this or nothing. Tasheel, I'm making it easier for you all as a people. This is how you guys do it. If I'm going somewhere, my friend tells me, oh, they're closed, do I necessarily look it up after that? No, this is how we act. This is how we deal on a daily basis with things. We ask each other, and if someone's reliable enough, they know what they're talking about. Yeah, some of you in the audience, I've told you before, I would love to be stuck with you on an island because you can figure everything out. I'm not gonna, if you tell me like a place is closed or this is how things work, I'm not gonna double check, triple check, Sometimes the matter is a sensitive one. And so I will have to triple check, quadruple check. In Islam also, there will be some cases where Allah will say, or the Sharia will say, no. In this case, you have to ascertain. You have to achieve certainty. Someone's life is on the line. There's a chance that their life is in danger. Someone comes and tells you, oh, no, don't worry, they're fine. One person, let's say I reach 60, 70% conjecture and certainty that, no, their life is fine. No. In these cases, the legislator, the lawmaker, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whatever you want to call it, they will say, no, you have to do ihtiyat in these cases. But all in all, in normal situations, this is how we deal, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to make things easier on us. So, for that expediency of the greater good, Allah allows us to sometimes follow things that might make it wrong for us personally. So I'm missing out on an individual expediency. But what are we securing as when this methodology is sanctioned by Islam? We are achieving the greater good, that greater expediency, that greater maslaha, which he calls tasheel, to make things easier for us. Okay, but at the end of the day, he acknowledges. Mudhaffar acknowledges that yes, you will be sometimes individually missing out on certain good and bad. Okay? And so someone might say, well, this is not going to be convincing enough for me. He says, for me it is more convincing, and we see this all over Sharia. It's not just in this case, where the greater good overrides the individual good. Times of ghaiba, what else can you do? What do you want to do? Do you want to do ihtiyat in everything? Do you want to do ihtiyat in everything? And I skipped that one point. That at the top, if you see the first point, that if Allah makes certain things hujjah, that entails our deprivation of real good and bad. If you really want to, bismillah, you can do ihtiyat. And you can secure all of the good and bad in things. Yeah, but not everyone's willing to do that. Alright, so this is maslaha tashiliyah, he calls it. And so we're perfectly fine, and we miss some of those good things, it's fine, he says, for the greater good. There is another individual, Sheikh Ansari, he's also famous, and we've mentioned him before. Ansari, he says, I have something called maslaha sulukiyya, not tashiliyya, sulukiyya. And as I said before, I promise, these words, we won't use them too much anymore. It's just today, this introduction, these 5, 6, 7, 8 sessions we've had introductory, and then we'll move on. He says, I believe in maslaha sulukiyya. Suluk means to traverse a path, to take and adopt a path, okay, and a certain method of doing things. He says, look, I cannot agree with this idea of there's a greater good, and that greater good is being secured, even at the cost and price of what? Individual deprivation of expediency. He says, I can't accept that. Maybe he feels that this goes against God's justice or whatever. That Allah allows us to fall into this problem of missing out on certain expediencies. So, what does he say? He says, no, I believe there is another maslaha. Just like Mudhaffar said, there's a greater good expediency. He says, I believe in another good out there, but it's not the greater good. It's on an individual basis. And that individual expediency is this, that look, when the hadith told you that Salat al-Fajr is not wajib, every time you're skipping Salat al-Fajr, what's happening? You are missing out on an expediency, on something good, a maslaha. But at the same time, because you're doing this, because the hadith told you, this following that path, adopting that hadith as your way forward, that itself has a maslaha in it. There's an expediency there that you secured. You missed out on the expediency of Salat al-Fajr, but you secured the expediency of following the hadith. And so this compensates for that, this makes up for that. This is one explanation of what Shaykh al-Ansari says. Now, Mudhaffar in his book, because Mudhaffar came later than Ansari, so he's seen what Ansari says. He says, I don't understand exactly what he means by this. I'll read the Arabic really quickly. He says, على أن المصلحة السلوكية الآن إلى الآن لم نتحقق مراد الشيخ منها. We haven't understood what he meant by it exactly. So my explanation, brothers and sisters, that I gave you right now is the best I can say. But what is that? What is the exact essence of that expediency? Just following a hadith, what does that mean exactly? What does that translate to? Apparently he hasn't really opened it up. And so Mudhaffar goes on when he's explaining. He says, look, we don't understand what he says, and don't think that it's as clear as you think. No. And he goes on, he gives some explanations for that. So maslaha sulukiyya, this is the second one. That look, I'm going to solve the problem of how is it possible that Allah allows us to make these mistakes, and so we're going to miss out on things. You are going to miss out on certain things, but you're going to be compensated for that. Equally, because you adopted what the hadith was telling you to do. You traverse that path of following the hadith instead of putting it aside and discarding it. Okay? That's the second one. There's a third answer here that can be given. Al-maslaha al-rastaniyya. Okay? Or I like to call it maslaha ubudiyya. And this you won't find it in any books. So this is probably a very crazy answer, or it might be a really good one. Who knows? But this is how personally I see it. And this is something that me and one of my brothers have done work on a little bit. In all of these cases, we are looking at the expediency of the dunya. For example, intoxicants cause problems. We all know what the problems they cause. Because of that, for example, the Sharia has made intoxicant consumption haram. Okay? We all understand that. This is a dunyawi thing. Correct? An expediency of the dunya. And everything else, all of these laws, all these laws, the rules, the do's, the don'ts, all of them, they're based on what happens in this dunya as a result of those actions. Shaykh Mutahari, in parentheses, let me say this, he says that some ask, well, why is it that in Yawm al-Qiyamah, the same khamr and wine that was haram here becomes halal over there? He says because over there, the ramifications of the consumption of khamr aren't there anymore. See, he makes it clear that in the akhirah, those don't exist anymore. They existed here. Okay? And so because they exist here, in other words, it's as if he's saying, I'm just being very theoretical here. It's as if he's saying, if khamr was causing issues in the akhirah, it would still be haram. It's as if he's saying that. As if. But he says, look, in the akhirah, things become halal that were haram here because they don't have those implications anymore that they had in the dunya. Okay? So in other words, he's saying it's all about this dunya. All the expediencies, and Shaykh Ansari also says this in one of his books of usul. I remember seeing this line years ago, many years ago. I saw that one line, I was like, this is a very important line. I better remember this one. And so 10 years later, now that I'm trying to find the line, I can't find it anymore in his book. But back then I remember he said this too. In a line he said that the rules and laws, they all revolve around the expediencies on this life. Because there are some who have the understanding that some things make no sense here, but they have an expediency in the akhirah. According to these scholars, it's about this dunya. But anyway, that's a discussion there. Some might agree, some might disagree. Parentheses closed, guys. What are we talking about? We're saying that the rules and laws of this dunya are revolving around the maslaha and mafsadas and expediencies of this dunya. Okay? And so we're all trying to figure out, if I follow this hadith and it turns out to be wrong, then I'm going to miss out on this expediency, that expediency. That's correct. But why are we making it an Islamic laws only about this? As a matter of fact, these rituals and laws that we have, okay, they do have this dunyawi aspect to them, but they also have another aspect to them. Okay? They have another aspect to them as well. What is that other aspect? That is the ubudiyyah that we exhibit in following the rules that we have for us. I want you to pay attention to this. There's a bigger expediency, I would call it, a bigger maslaha, that we've been created for that actually. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. We've been created for ubudiyyah. This ubudiyyah shows itself, okay, in our following of the rules, the laws, the hujjas, those things that Allah has made binding on us. So if the hadith told me that Fajr is not wajib, and I stayed away from it because Allah has allowed, I'm not going to pray it. Okay? True, I missed out on the expediency of Fajr. Or lobster is halal, I had lobster, turned out it was haram and there was something bad in it for me. I thought that this glass in front of me is water, and Islam tells me if you're not sure what it is, if you're not sure if it became najis or not, you can consume it. I consumed it, turns out it was alcohol, and I got intoxicated and all of that. True, all of this happens. This is all limited to here. But was I following the rules or not? When I drank that glass, was I drinking it because Allah said don't, or because Allah said you can? So there was an ubudiyyah that was exhibited in me following this hadith, following that rule, and so on. Yes, I missed out on the dunyawi expediency. But was I exhibiting ubudiyya or not? Yes, you were exhibiting ubudiyya. So as a result, I'm securing akhirah, even though we got it wrong. I haven't seen anyone point this out. It might be totally off what I'm saying. For example, the famous verse that says that in Hajj, the ones who are doing the qurbani, the udhiyah, what is the verse? It says, it is not their flesh or their blood that reaches Allah. Okay, you slaughtered the animal. The poor people got to eat. I don't know, things like that. But there was something else that was also achieved in this obedience of yours. That's the taqwa that you exhibited. It says, it is not their flesh or their blood that reaches Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but rather it is your God-wariness, your taqwa that reaches Him. So there's something else that's happening here as well in all of this. Yes, it's unfortunate that I got intoxicated, okay? But that's within the realm of dunya. The fact that I followed the rules, what am I getting out of all of this? I'm getting ubudiyya out of all of this at the end of the day. And if I'm getting ubudiyya out of it, I am securing what I was created for. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. Okay, so yeah, we're not going to go the route of Mudhaffar, who said there's a greater good and you're missing out on individual maslaha. Fine. But what about the rest? He says there is no rest. You missed out on it, but their greater good was secured. Ansari said there's a good in following the hadith, but he didn't specify. So maybe he's saying what we're saying. I don't know. What we're saying is there is a maslaha in adopting what the hadith told you. And what is that? We're specifying what it is. It is more proximity to Allah because you're exhibiting obedience to Allah. Does that make sense, inshallah? These are three solutions to that problem that, as I said, one of the brothers in our last session had this question because it's a logical question that comes up. If these methods are sanctioned for us to use, then we sometimes get it wrong. And Allah is putting us in error. And that doesn't make sense. Doesn't add up with His justice. Yeah, but what if you're actually securing akhirah with this? Think about it. There are some ulama, I've seen some who said that we sometimes will do something that is makruh, for example. This is not something I'm encouraging. I'm not saying do makruh, brothers and sisters. But I remember one of these guys who had shared some of his visions with us too, when he was really deep into the irfani stuff. He said that sometimes we will do things that are mubah or makruh even just because Allah said it's okay to do it. And we are exhibiting our obedience to Allah even in that way. Because you have allowed it, oh Allah, I'm going to do it. Yeah? That's how they see it, So I don't want to make fiqh all irfani and stuff. But all in all, if we look at the bigger picture in this sense, this is a bigger and broader picture than even what Mudhaffar is painting for us. Okay. Alright, so having said all of that, I want to end with this. That this expediency that we are talking about, the real good and bad in things. Brothers and sisters, we have to understand this, and this is of the utmost importance because this happens all the time with our people. It is usually something that cannot be discovered completely. Note the clause completely. Yes, I can be sure that, for example, let's say wine is haram because of intoxication, but is that the ultimate and absolute reason for it, or is that part of the reason? I might be able to swear on this one, maybe, but can I swear on, for example, if I have an auntie that is my uncle's wife, for example, and she changed me when I was a kid, when I growing up, she changed my diaper. She's like a mother to me. But from an Islamic perspective, she's not mahram to me. Can I just say, oh, these mahram, non-mahram issues are there just so that, big issues don't come up, big problems don't happen. You know what I'm talking about. She's like my mother. I'm good. I'm set. Well, I don't think any marja' taqlid has ever said that now they're mahram to you as if, why? Because they changed your diaper. Think about it. There's a risala amaliyah. It says, a woman who is not your actual biological aunt is non-mahram to you unless she changed your diaper when you were a kid. Do we have such a law and rule? We don't. But in the books of our people, lots of times this is the case. We can catch ourselves making this mistake all the time. Okay, when we're trying to get off the hook and find a way to justify, just say, I'm not attracted to them. I know I'm not supposed to do this, but may Allah forgive me. That I think is better than trying to find some way out of it when we know that's not the case. Anyway, point being, yeah, mahram, non-mahram issues, lots of the time have to do with, yeah, those big matters that we all are aware of. But is it only because of that? I don't know, I can't swear on it. Well, if you can't swear on it, then you cannot extrapolate and say, and generalize and be like, I'm gonna, make a new rule up because the expediency here is this. How do you know the expediency is? Are you 100% sure this is all of the expediency in this because of the rule? No, then you can't. And so this is where, if a person, a mujtahid, really comes to the conclusion that the expediency in something is A, B, or C completely, then yeah, oh my God, that does wonders. Okay, now the examples I want to give you, these are not good examples. Because these are examples not for maslaha and mafsada, these are more examples for manat and these kinds, and milak. But I'll give the examples because they're very similar. For example, if a mujtahid comes to the conclusion that al-khamru najis li'annahu muskir, khamr, wine, is najis because it's an intoxicant. Guess what he can do after that? Can he come to the conclusion that beer is also najis? If the only reason why wine is najis, and he has proof for it between him and Allah, is that because it's an intoxicant, then all those other liquids out there that are intoxicant as well will become najis. Interesting, huh? Or for example, if a marja, a mujtahid, comes to the conclusion that the only reason why certain things were haram back then were because they were gambling tools. And so as a result, if something's not a gambling tool anymore in our day and age, it won't be haram, then they might come to the conclusion that, for example, chess is halal. Okay? If a person comes to the conclusion that a certain game, even though it was mentioned in a hadith by name, like chess, because we have hadith for it, the reason for this, and he has to have this proof between him and Allah, and they do. If he comes to that conclusion that chess was haram back then, right, because of its gambling nature, well, in this day and age, it's not even used as a gambling tool anymore. It's more of a game they play. Then he can give a fatwa that it's halal. On the flip side, though, if someone's not 100% sure, they cannot give this fatwa. So, if someone doesn't have sufficient proof between them and Allah, that the reason why the Imam said chess is haram back then, not because it's a gambling tool, but because chess in and of itself might be haram. Chess might have been haram back then, one of the reasons because it was used for gambling, but there's other reasons too maybe. This person cannot extrapolate. This person cannot say, oh, chess is now halal. And so that's why you see, and this is where people find problems here and discrepancies between marajah. Oh, has this marja not seen the hadith that says chess is haram? Yeah, he has. But between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's reached the manat, the dalil, let's say the expediency. He has ascertained that the only reason why this was mentioned by name during the times of the Imams was because it was a gambling tool. And because it's not a gambling tool anymore, it's halal. But Sayyid Sistani, for example, he's not convinced. He says, I'm not convinced. And so he'll say, I can't say it's halal. I feel like there's a chance that there was other reasons too for chess being haram. So I'm going to, and they've said it by name. So brothers and sisters, it takes some courage for a mujtahid. Not courage meaning courage, I'm afraid of the people. No, courage meaning between them and Allah. Am I really convinced that I have figured this one out or not? If they have, then knowing what the maslaha is going to help them out in their ijtihad. If not though, then no, they can't. For example, Sistani, he says wine made from grapes is najis. Guess what? What about wine made from other ingredients? Like, what do we have? Experts? Huh? You don't know, huh? Good one. What's this down? They have other types of wine too, like made from rice, I think, and other things, yeah? Is that najis? If you ask him, he'd probably say not necessarily. The one made from grapes is najis. They're all haram to consume. So let's make sure we're on the same page. People are like nodding, like, No, just because it's not najis in his view, doesn't mean it's a halal to consume. Still haram to consume. But if someone on the plane opens up something and it splashes on me and I'm not sure if it was grape wine or something else, then it's tahir for me. I can still pray in that shirt that I have on, that kind of thing. Sayyid Sistani, he says, I'm not going to say all of these are najis now. All intoxicants are najis. Why? Because for me it's not proven and established that the only reason, the only maslaha or mafsada in all of this is intoxication. As I said, I'm being a little loose here in this the examples that I'm giving and using the word maslaha mafsada, but you get the idea I'm trying to get at here, okay? If you can figure it out, then it'll help you in your ijtihad. If you can't, you have to do ihtiyat, and if you extrapolate, that means you've crossed those lines and you have stepped into the realm of qiyas. Why? Because you have said, for example, you have said grape wine is najis for sure because we have hadith for it. And because there are other forms of wine out there, we call them wine at the end of the day. They're similar to this one. I'm going to give the same ruling to them. This is also najis. Wait a minute. Is that your only reason? Or was it established through other proof to you that anything that is an intoxicant and is liquid is najis? Was that established? No, it wasn't, but these are similar to each other. That's qiyas, my friend. So, for one mujtahid, it might be ijtihad. For another one, it might be qiyas. Yeah? And that's why you'll have these different views here. One will say, I have been convinced that this is the reason, and so I will do ijtihad here, and I will give the same rule that we have for this to that one as well. The other one will say, it's not proven to me that this is the only reason, and so I can't. The best I'll say is, do ihtiyat here, or something like that. The best, if I say anything at all even. Or else I cannot attribute the ruling of this to that one because I'm not sure that they're both identical in all of the properties that played a role in this being haram, or halal, or wajib, or makruh, and so on. Okay? And so with this, we end our introductory part of this whole series that we're having. After this, we want to actually go into the Quran, see what different discussions the mujtahids have when it comes to Quran. After the Quran, what different discussions do they have when it comes to hadith and approaching hadith? Make our way down that list. Once we're done with what ijtihad looks like, then what we're going to do is we're going to go into the different eras of ijtihad that we have. Okay, the history of ijtihad, from the beginning, from Kulayni till Khomeini, they say, right? Of different eras that we had, what the different styles of ijtihad that were prevalent were, till we reach the contemporary times, and then we're going to move into Taqlid, inshallah. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Any questions before we end? All right. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Recite a salawat.